Hello, everyone, and welcome to Paranormal Roundtable, PRT for short. My name is Josh Turner, also known as Wolf. Most of my friends call me Wolf, but you can call me Mr. Turner. I'm just kidding. You can call me Josh. You can call me Wolf. Just don't call me late for dinner. This is my co-host, Tony, also known as
Mushu.
Mushu.
You can call me
Sweet and sour pork or General Tso's chicken.
I like sweet and sour pork. I like sweet and sour Mushu, but whatever.
Is it General Tso or General Tsao? How they this the
I think it's, I don't know. I mean,
General Tso's chicken,
isn't that Chinese?
TSAO, right? Something like that. Well, I'm not asking. You're not Chinese. I'm saying if you,
I am Chinese.
Well,
sir.
you're half, but I'm saying like you're not. You weren't raised up in that culture.
Yeah, so I have no idea how to pronounce it.
You don't know how to pronounce it. You don't speak any Mandarin or
Cantonese.
Cantonese.
No.
So you're You're basically a Cantonese. You're really just a white Asian.
Like Cantonese.
So tonight, and we're joined with our friend Michael Moran. This may be a regular thing. Mike just may be coming onto the roundtable and talking with us and shooting the breeze. But today, Mike, you're going to talk about something serious. We're going to get into that in a minute, right, Mike?
Yes.
Mike is going to talk to you how you can save 15% on your car insurance. I'm just kidding. If you switch to So what we're going to talk about, we'll get to that in a minute, but first we got to do prtpodcast.com, prtpodcast.com, where you can find
our artwork, our merch store, our PayPal, and also all of our past episodes. You know, we appreciate everyone who visits it, and then you can also find all of those links in the YouTube description right under the video.
Yeah. Well, did you say you appreciate everybody?
I appreciate everyone who goes and
I don't. I don't appreciate none of you fools.
Well, I mean, my appreciation.
I'm
is
serious. I
more than enough.
really actually appreciate everyone, and I love all my listeners, and I try to interact with everyone as much as I possibly can. And I absolutely appreciate it. All the great comments that we get on the shows. Not real big on all the bad ones, but who really is? And sometimes I like to have fun with them and mess with them and stuff.
Yeah,
but
it's fun.
It is.
I mean,
fun.
that's why I like it. It's like, even despite it being supposed to like be a negative comment, it's fun just to mess with them. Yeah. I also like the fans who are creating images of us. I'm finally
Clint Turner.
Clint.
The funny thing is, I'm sorry, Clint. Curtis Turner. I said Clint. I got another friend named Clint, but Curtis. Like Curtis Turner, I want to give him a shout out. He's always like making cartoons of me and stuff.
He's making them of me now too.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. He's a funny guy, and so he's no relation to me. He's not my cousin or anything like that. But he's a pretty funny guy. So Mike is as we've said before, Mike is the head of Cryptid Squad.
Yep.
He's got his own page, which I'm an admin of. And Tony, you're a part of that too, I believe.
Yep, I'm an admin of that.
Yeah, we're both admins. And Michael, that is your group. That is your page. It's got like 1,200 members or whatever. At this point, probably will by the time this thing airs. We'll probably have even more. It's growing all the time. I'm always approving member requests. So my group is Paranormal Roundtable. Tony's is Paranormal Encounters, and Nellie's is Paranormal Lounge. We're all brother and sister groups. And then we have Cryptids and Paranormal Reality, which is Lori Shivers. I keep wanting to pronounce her name incorrectly, and she's already gotten on to me about that. So yeah, Cryptids and Paranormal Reality is her page, and I'm also an admin for that group. Anyways, those are some groups to get involved in and to stay up to date on anything paranormal. Please go to our page and like. One is Josh Wolf Turner. It's in Josh, and then Wolf is in like quotations, Turner. That is my fan page. And then there's a fan page for Paranormal Roundtable. It's got the Shadow Hat Man on there. That's our original logo when we first started the show. And so you can go and like those pages. And like Tony had said earlier, if you got any artwork you want to submit, go to the PRT podcast. And also, our email address is daswolfman88@gmail.com, daswolfman88@gmail.com. So without further ado, as they say, do you want to get into the go? I've just looked at that Curtis just made a
I know.
picture of
He's
Tony.
made a bunch of them, and the thing is I don't know where that photo is from, and I'm trying to figure it out, which is a little weird.
I sent it to him.
Really? Because I was like, I got better photos. Where did he get this one?
Yeah, because I gave him that one because you were being silly, and I thought that was a funny photo.
Yeah.
All right, so without good one. Okay, I can start. I had a submission that was given to me from a listener, and it was a very long story, and so I thought maybe I would just read it because Mike, I've read it to you and Tony, and I didn't know. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start off with this one. This is a submission given to me by someone named Angela, not her real name, it's close to it, but not. And so I'm going to call her Angela, and she wrote this to us. It says here, okay, so my very first memory is of Halloween when I was 3 years old. My family, mom, dad, and 2 older brothers and an older sister, and myself being the youngest, lived in the rural wooded area on the northwest side of Washington State near Vancouver. The nearest community was Skamakawa, and I hope I pronounced that right, Skamakaway, a few miles away. We lived in a huge turn-of-the-century 3-story house that had once been used as an orphanage. It was a very old building, and judging from a couple photos I've seen, it was dilapidated, ironically. It was on a Halloween afternoon that my parents gathered us kids up and took us all to a costume party at our church. When we came home, we were greeted by all of our neighbors and first responders blocking the road to our home as it was on fire and burning to the ground. There was nothing we could do to salvage it, and I remember looking out the window from the back seat of our station wagon and watching the building collapse in flames. My parents were crying, and there were fire trucks and neighbors lined up on both sides of the road. I remember being very confused. Fast forward to a few hours later, our next-door neighbor was a family who owned a dairy. Later on, my oldest sister married their oldest son. They let us all sleep there that night and for the next few days until we could get a different place to live. It was still fairly early in the night when my parents bedded me down. The rest of the family was still up and in the living room trying to overcome the shock. They put me in a crib in a long, narrow storage room with floor-to-ceiling windows the length of the room, and shut the door so that I would go to sleep. Looking back now, I'm sure that back in the day, this room was probably somewhat of a greenhouse or solarium for plants. When I was there, it was just messy with boxes and storage. I remember being upset and humiliated because they had put me in a crib and not a bed. I was a big girl. I had been sleeping in a big girl bed, and I was not liking this crib. I remember sitting up and looking out through the bars on the crib like a prisoner. The yard light was shining through the windows, illuminating the room like daylight, and I could see everything as if it was midday. I remember looking out through the curtainless windows. There were tall hedges that stood beside each of the windows all the way down the wall. I remember dropping a stuffed toy between the bars, and I was trying to grab it but couldn't reach it when I heard a quiet tapping on the window in front of me. I remember looking out the window and seeing this beautiful woman outside looking in at me. She was slender and had long black hair that went down past her waist. She was wearing a long white gauzy dress. She was very beautiful, and she was smiling at me and opening and closing her hand like you do when you're waving at a little kid. I remember smiling back at her and waving. She pointed to the bottom of the window and motioned for me to open it. She was pretty, and her smile was so friendly and sweet, she made me like her immediately. I remember looking at the window and trying to figure out how I was going to get it open, but I was stuck in baby prison. I remember looking over at the closed bedroom door and seeing the light filtering from the other room. I heard her rap on the window again. This time it was louder and a bit more aggressive. I looked back at her again, and her sweet, pretty smile had changed, and she was now glaring at me, was obviously getting angry at me. She motioned at the bottom of the window for me to open it. I looked back over at the door and around me, and as I was trying to figure out how to climb out of the crib when I heard a screech against the window. She was no longer beautiful and feminine. Her long black hair had turned into a mass of matted tangles. Her dress was no longer white and gauzy, but had turned gray, filthy, and torn. Her beautiful face had melted into a skeleton, and her lips were peeled back into a horrible sneer. She had long, pointed fangs and teeth like an animal. I started screaming bloody murder, and I remember my entire family bursting through the door and my dad scooping me up in his arms. That was my very first memory, and because of that, I still can't look out of a window at night. All curtains have to be pulled tight. Now, I spent most of my teen years trying to justify what I had seen by assuming it was just my imagination from the trauma of seeing our house burn down, or even some cruel joke with a Halloween costume trying to scare me. I would have been content to think that had the puzzle pieces not come together years later when I talked to my sister's mother-in-law, the dairy owner. about what happened that night. As I said, I lived in Vegas for about a year with my sister and her husband in one of those gated communities with a big swimming pool. Laura, my sister's mother-in-law, was staying with us for a while. I was about 17, so I took her with me down to the swimming pool in the courtyard, and we talked about the night our house burned down. I told her that I didn't want her to think I was crazy, but I had seen something that night. She hadn't even heard what I was about to say before she told me that she knew what I had seen. She knew what I had seen, and she wanted to hear what it was because she had some things to tell me about it. I told her what I had seen, and she told me that she remembered me screaming at her husband, and my dad went outside to investigate. She said I refused to look out the window, but I was pointing over my shoulder and screaming monster over and over. She told me that there was a fresh skiff of snow on the ground, and when her husband and my dad went outside, there was a fresh set of tracks in the snow up to the window. But they disappeared in the middle of the yard as if they lifted off the ground. According to my dad and her husband, they weren't human, but they weren't really animal either. They couldn't tell what they were. Laura told me she believed with all her heart because at the same time this happened, two of her friends had encounters with something that traumatized them. According to her, one of her friends was cleaning her attic and she looked up and saw something staring at her through the window that terrified her to the point she dropped her broomstick and never went back into the attic. Another one of her friends saw something through her bedroom window that scared her so bad she had to be hospitalized. Laura's one friend told her that what she saw looked like a half-rotted corpse with long black tangled hair and fangs. To this day, I have never seen a Halloween costume or computer-generated movie that even comes close to what I saw. I only know that if I ever do see this thing again, I'm sure I'll have a heart attack. I'll never be able to look out a window at night, and just the thought of it makes me nauseated. If in all your travels and many encounters people share with you, you happen to hear of anyone else in the Skamakawa, however you pronounce it, area who saw this, I'd like to know. Stay safe, Angela. And she says here, by the way, Laura's friend who had the incident in the attic did not have a balcony, roof, or anything else for someone to stand on outside the attic. Whatever it was that was outside the attic had to be levitating. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we receive stories that are just so well put on their own that,
Yeah, that was a full story, and it was pretty well put together. There were a few little errors that were like I had to whatever, but for the most part, it was very well written, and it was easy to read.
Yeah.
But yeah, Angela, I appreciate you. You're a longtime listener and friend of the show, and I appreciate you sending that story. Like I said, she wanted her name to be, for the most part, anonymous. But it's not like you're crazy because people see things like this all the time. Mike, I'm going to tell you something. I immediately wanted to use this story instead of saving it because I didn't need to. Now, this story doesn't come from the Skamakawa area, and it doesn't even come from Washington. But I'll tell you one that I got. This one is right here in Texas. This one happened in Del Rio. Somebody that submitted this story to me, that this happened to their first cousin's husband, who they actually lived with at the time that it happened. And there was a lot of paranormal stuff going on in the house. I'll begin with that part of the paranormal aspect of what was going on. They said when they first moved in with their first cousin and her husband, the first night they were there, this was a couple, okay? And it was a 3-bedroom. It wasn't a big house, but it was 3 bedrooms, and it was only a couple living there. So they had 2 spare bedrooms. And so they took one of the bedrooms and began to rent from them. And they were just trying to get back on their feet. And the first night that they were there, they heard the toaster oven go off, like, you know how it sounds when it pops open. And they heard like what they thought was somebody making a lot of noise, banging around the kitchen. What they thought they were in there making sandwiches or something. They were opening the refrigerator, opening and closing the cupboards. And so eventually she got up to go and just like, cause it was just very loud. And she was like, what is going on? Like how long is this going to go on? So she got up to go and check. And as she goes into the kitchen, all the cupboard doors are open. And she said that they had one of those islands. And if I remember correctly, it was like an island in the middle of the kitchen. And all the cupboard doors were open, and they had one of those things that hangs down. I forgot what she called it, like what the holds the pot and pans or whatever. I forgot how she put it, whatever. And they were moving. They were kind of moving back and forth. Like I remember them or her saying that they were kind of clanging together. And so I talked to her, and she was describing this whole thing to me. And she said that she felt like what was like a cold breeze brush by her. And she said that it gave her like chills, and her whole right side felt cold. Whatever it was had gone by her. And she ran back to the room and told her husband, she's like, there's something wrong here. There is something really wrong in this house. It was like there was something there. And she's like, I could hear almost like footsteps, and I felt like something, like moved past me. And so this went on like the first night, and then it went on again the second night. She said the same thing happened. It started up, that there was this noise going on in the kitchen, whatever. Well, she couldn't get her husband to wake up. His name was, I'll just call him Ray. She said, she was like, Ray. She kept trying to wake him up. Every time this happened, it happened around the same time at like 3:12 in the morning. It was like 3:12, anywhere from 3:12 to 3:15. She said it would start and then it would end. And she said that she got up again the second night because it just was a lot of noise, and she didn't want to be rude and asked him, were y'all in the kitchen, whatever. Got up. She heard somebody in the bathroom. So she heard them clearly in the bathroom. Like it sounded like they were moving around, doing something in the bathroom. She could see the shadow moving underneath the door from the light in the bathroom. So she stood there in the bathroom because she was scared of what had happened the night before. So she thought, okay, this happened. Okay, whatever's going on in the kitchen is this paranormal stuff, whatever. Well, there's somebody that's in the bathroom. Obviously, it's either my cousin or her husband. So she waited, and eventually she knocked on the door, and the door never opened. The door opened like when she began to knock vigorously, as she said. She's like, I knocked pretty hard. I was like, would you say vigorously? She said, yes. The door opened after vigorously knocking on it. There was nobody in the bathroom. But this noise stopped in the bathroom, but it was still going on in the kitchen. So she goes into the kitchen. She's brave, and she walks in there. And as she's walking into the kitchen, and she gets into she peeks her head around the corner of the kitchen because she's scared to walk right out into the open. She sees a butcher's knife on the ground, like spinning around in a circle. I asked her, because I don't know what the significance would be, if it was clockwise or counterclockwise, and she said she didn't really pay attention to that. Yeah, so she ran back to her bedroom, and at that point, her husband, Ray, was actually waking up. And he was like, what time is it? And she's like, it's 3:15. And he's like, oh, and he went back to sleep. He groaned and went back to sleep. The next day, he had no recollection of even waking up. She said she talked to him, and he was just like, And he even gave her a couple of like little answers like, oh, it's probably just the wind, it's your imagination, whatever. But then the next day, he had no recollection of the conversation. Nothing weird seemed to be happening to anybody else in the house that they were noticing. The next day, she went out into the back patio, and she sat there with her cousin. And she said point blank, she's like, something's wrong, in this house. I've woke up twice, and there's kitchen utensils and things being banged around, and there's a knife that's, and she says, stop talking about it. She's like, I don't want to hear this. She's like, what? And she's like, don't talk about it. And so her cousin got up and went back inside, and she was just like dumbfounded. So she was smoking a cigarette with her cousin. So she finished her cigarette. She went back inside and just tried to not talk about it, not think about it. And the days were normal. Their husbands went to work. She had a part-time job where she only worked 3 days a week, and her cousin was pregnant. So she stayed around the house. So on the days where she didn't have her job or whatever, she would be there with the cousin and helping her do stuff around the house. It was a mutual thing where she helped them, and they gave her cheap rent, whatever. And nothing would be out of place. It was only in the morning, in the middle of the night, and we've talked before about 3 a.m. being a weird witching hour.
It's always around 3 a.m. Stuff seems to go bump in the night.
Yeah, and if you go back to the interviews what I did with the Atrastains, with the demonic oppression, that is the 3 a.m. is that window where a lot of stuff happens. This is where it gets weird. Like, okay, eventually her cousin's mental health began to kind of break down. the woman in question on the story, she began to like the woman who moved in to help her. She that witnessed the original events. The events began to just become commonplace at night. Every night she would hear moving around and shuffling and things like that, and she would just block it out. She literally slept.
Repetitive.
They were repetitive, yeah, and she began to wear earplugs, so she didn't have to hear it, and it worked. She put a blinds on her eyes and earplugs, and it blocked it out. But one night, something woke her up by pulling on her leg. And she said she felt a jolt, and then something pulled her right leg, and then she felt her head bob back and forth, and then she felt another jolt, and then she pulled the blinds off of her eyes, and she could make out through there was like moonlight coming in from the window. She said it was enough light where you could kind of make out what looked like a shadow at first, but there was like a black shadowy looking thing, but its arm, like when it moved into the moonlight, you could see a skeleton. Almost like you could see a skeleton, like this thing was not a black mass like she thought because it was dark in the room. When it came into the light, it was clearly like skeletal. And she didn't get a good look at its face. But here's what's messed up. Eventually, her cousin began to get sick. She was getting closer to her due date. And unfortunately, she lost the baby. Miscarriage. So as she got further along in her pregnancy, she had some sort of trauma. I mean, and caused her to have a miscarriage. She confided in her cousin and told her that one night that this had happened a few times, that something was coming into the room at night. And it started with her husband would never wake up while this was going on. Something was touching her chest, rubbing its finger down like a finger, rubbing it down between her breasts and going down to her navel. And it was like tapping on her. And it was like where the baby was at and touching it. And she said that she would like push it away, like not even thinking, like she didn't know what it was. And then one night she felt like something would tickle her, but she thought it was like a dream. And she opened her eyes and she saw this skeletal being, an entity at the side of her bed with like long, stringy black hair. And it was a woman wearing like what was a maternity gown. And there was blood on the stomach area of this maternity gown, like what looked like dried blood. And this woman, whatever she was, leaned forward and opened her mouth, and she had like fangs. And the face was like rotted flesh, and the eyes were hollowed out. This terrified her. So she laid there looking up at this creature, whatever it was, and that bony finger was like reaching for her, and she swatted at it, and it was just like air, and she fell out of the bed. And then a couple days later, this incident played out again, not quite the same, but she said that it was a recurring thing. This thing was harassing her. And she thinks that is what led to her, it did something to her to cause her to have the miscarriage. So that's a horrifying story. That story with the woman with the scraggly hair, whatever you want to call it, the stringy hair, it very much echoed the story that Angela had sent me just recently.
That reminds me of the Aswang.
The Aswang.
Aswang.
Yes, from the Philippines.
Yes. Apparently, they are known in their story myths that they come out at night and they take the baby.
Makes me wonder if that's not what the... I'm sorry, Mike, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, that's what that was reminding me of. But go ahead.
Here's my question with the story that Angela sent us. Now, and this story from someone that was from a lot longer ago, but what is it? I mean, like me and Tony have been doing some research and trying to put together, because we're doing 3 or 4 projects at the same time, but we're trying to put together a show for an East Asian show, whatever. The Aswang was something that we wanted to talk about, along with the kappas from Japan and the oni, the kitsune or the kitsune, whatever you want to call, however you pronounce it. But the Aswang is very interesting because it's a creepy thing that goes around at night, kind of like the Llorona of the Mexican legends. And the Llorona, when people have seen it, have described it almost the same way, that it looks like a woman, but it's more of like a hag-looking thing, and it has like these big fangs. And I've heard it described that way. And I've heard people say, I should say, that they've seen this thing float across water. My mom went out to a bridge that's right outside of Taylor, but this bridge, it's known for people seeing this horseman, but there's also people who have seen this entity in that water over the San Gabriel River. And my mom claims that when she was a kid, her older sister took her out for a drive, because not as a friendly gesture, but because my abuelita, which was her mother, told her, "You're not going out. You're going to take her with you," because she was the tattletale. So my Aunt Rosa couldn't leave unless she had her drag her along, and and she could snitch on her if they did anything untoward, So she said she was a little kid, and she was probably like 9 or something like that, and they went out with her sister, who was already a teenager, and she was kind of like the forced tag along, and they were parked at the front of this bridge, and they all were getting out, and this thing that looked like a woman with a gown was crouched down at the water's edge, and then it saw them and it began to float across the water coming towards them. I can't ever get my mom to come on the show and tell these stories. She's got a few of them. She's got some, like, what I think are dogman stories too, but she doesn't really, and I don't really like talking about it on the show because I don't want her to hear it and then make her, because she's apprehensive about even talking about these things. And then she may hear it and it may traumatize her. I don't know. Mom, I'm sorry if you're listening. But so anyways, this thing reminded me of Llorona. And now, Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I do. The way you're describing that, how it kind of reminds me of the way they describe the Aswang, pretty much like a vampire, pretty much. But I mean, I would think a vampire would be able to be up off the ground,
Is it like a demonic vampire?
The Aswang or was she?
Any of these? I mean, any of these creatures, they're always female, and they're always like wandering around, and attacking people at night. They're always seen at night. They're never seen during the day, ever. And they always look like they can look like women, but when you on closer inspection, they are stringy haired, vampiric looking creatures.
I have heard during the day that they can be a normal person and not know, a person can not know that that's what they are. And then like at night, then they, depending on, I don't know if it matters, but they just change into the Aswang. I would think that it's pretty much like some kind of shapeshifter, possibly.
Have you guys seen Conan? I don't remember which one it was, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I just remember like watching one of his movies. I don't know which one it was. I don't know if it was The Barbarian, The Destroyer. I don't know. I haven't seen him in so long. But I remember this one scene where he's like making love to this really hot chick. And I just remember her. She's got like dark hair or something. She looks really pretty, if I remember correctly. I just remember like seeing it and thinking something's going to happen, because obviously it's Conan. He's going to have to fight or something weird, And sure enough, she turns into this like vampire-looking hag thing and tries to attack him, and then he has to kill it. Y'all don't remember that?
I never saw Conan.
It's been a while. I have to watch it again.
Well, anyways, Conan, being the bad dude that he is, of course, he wins, but it's just messed up. I mean, you make love to some hot chick, and then she's trying to eat you afterwards. That's crazy.
Yep.
Tony's like, yep. So my nephew, Anthony's here in the studio, of course. He's always here breaking our backs, me and Tony, forcing us to drink coffee and spit out shows and beating us, trying to get, gold out of lead like alchemy over here.
Well, yeah, you gotta make us money.
Well, we better try something else, because we're not making a lot of it with this. This is a lot. This is not, folks. This is not my livelihood. I'm just letting you know right now. I don't make much money off of it. I'm trying to do something with this show.
If you just do what I say.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to do that.
Make me money, boy. Sponge boy me, Bob.
So, Sponge boy me, Bob.
Yeah, Mr. Krabs.
I thought it was SpongeBob me boy.
Yeah, what the heck was
Who was that?
Well, no,
We're gonna leave that in too.
He says it both ways.
Oh, Sponge me Bob boy.
No, he says Sponge boy me Bob and Sponge boy Sponge.
I've never
Bob
heard
me
him
boy.
say that. Have you heard that, Tony?
He just made a mistake.
I think he just made a mistake. He's trying to cover it up.
No, I can prove it, and y'all will be wrong, and I will be right once again, like
we
always.
Won't prove it. We'll let
like always.
We'll let
we don't have to prove anything.
See what we have
We're
to
the
deal
stars
with?
of the show. You're just there being an aggravating person.
See what we have to deal
I'm
with.
aggravating. No, y'all are aggravating.
Oh my gosh!
I can't even talk.
Keep moving around. Keep moving the mics around.
Michael,
Sit still and talk.
Listen to this guy.
Give the people
you hear
quality.
what we have to go through, folks. What we have to go through. So that being said, I do have a career, and it's not this, but in this career, this secondary career that I've chosen in the radio, whatever, I have to put up with a lot, Mike. Okay, and so now you've been a part of the team. You kind of see how it is. Now you know what kind of horror and hell I go through with these people. Because you've been behind the scenes now.
SpongeBob me boy.
SpongeBob me boy. Speaking of that, okay, SpongeBob me boy, whatever over here. Anthony, now all seriousness, folks, let's, the no more
horsing around. But
yeah. No more Chuckle House here. Anthony, you have had an experience with what could be the Llorona.
Yeah, I mean that's how I interpreted it at the time, and that's really the only thing I have to compare it to at this point. In a nutshell, what happened was that I was hanging out with some friends, and we had plans to do without getting too like inappropriate for our listeners. I mean, it wasn't anything weird or nothing like that, but basically we had plans to do something that we were not supposed to be doing, right? Something that we would not want to tell our
as a teenager.
Yeah, as a teenager. This was probably like when I was 17, 18. I was 18.
You were that old already?
18. Yeah.
That means you were already living here. You came and you
No,
you weren't living, but you were probably coming and going back and forth.
Yeah. Like
Okay.
I was coming here on the weekends probably.
Terrible kid.
Basically, we had made these plans to go and get into some dumb teenage mischief. So I had told my mom, hey, I was going to so-and-so's house, and so-and-so told their parents, hey, I'm going to Anthony's house, and blah, blah, blah. And where we actually ended up going was this place known in our hometown of Taylor, Texas, locally as the cul-de-sac, and it was known as a cul-de-sac because that's just what it was. It was just a little cul-de-sac right there by that little country airport, and there wasn't really anything around it except for like cornfields or cotton fields or something. But about like 100 yards out was this little small pond, and there was like some trees around it. So we got out there, and there was like 4 or 5 of us, and we were beginning to do what we had planned on doing, and we were kind of in the middle of it. And I don't know, I would say about 10 or 15 minutes into it, we were just laughing and joking around, but that gets interrupted by what sounds like this woman crying, and I heard it, but I figured maybe I'm just hearing things, or maybe I'm just the only one who hears it.
Maybe the graveyard's just creeping you out or something.
Well, no, there's no graveyard around there.
Oh, my bad. I was thinking
Man,
something.
Keep up, pay attention.
Wow.
No,
I was thinking of another story. I got you.
Actually, that's close to the cotton fields by that airport.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's maize and cotton because Taylor has a little country airport. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, it's right there by
a creepy place too. Not the airport, but that place where he's talking about.
Yeah, it's like right on the edge of town. So I hear what sounds like a woman crying, but it's very faint, and I figured, well, maybe I'm just hallucinating. But so I kind of stopped, like my laughing and joking around, and then I noticed that at the same time my friends stopped too, and we all stopped and got silent, and we all heard the same thing. And my friend looked at me, and he told me, "Dude, do you hear that?" And I said, "I thought I was the only one who heard it. You're hearing the same thing too. And it's like, yeah, dude, there's some woman crying. We remembered that there was this pond, like I said, it was like 100 yards out, and there was no one around. It was in the middle of pretty much nothing, but there was like 4 or 5 of us, and we all heard the same thing. There was this woman clearly crying. She was like weeping, like bawling her eyes out. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't like something that just 1 or 2 people heard. We all heard the same thing, and we all grew up basically being threatened by La Llorona. You know, La Llorona is going to get you. It's like in the Mexican culture, it's just like the cucuy. It's like something that, it's like a local, like a legend or a Mexican folklore or whatever. And so that's what we all assumed that it was. And we all got in the car and burned out, and we left, and we were all scared. And we all went home after that, and we never really went back to that place with those same ambitions.
You know what? Hearing that story again, okay. First and foremost, what if it was a woman in danger that was hurt and some dude had beaten her or something? Or knowing our hometown, knowing Taylor, she had been attacked by a werewolf or a cadejo, hombre lobo or something, and she's hurt and she's trying to get away from it.
Well, if she's being attacked by a supernatural entity, what am I going to do with it? Like, what am I going to do?
You could be like some researchers have claimed, hey, shh, stop, go away.
All I'm going to do is go up there and die with her. No.
Oh, my God. You hearing this, Michael?
How selfish.
I'm supposed to stop a demon dog, a devil dog, or whatever she's being attacked by, if that's the case.
Mike, what do you think of his not helping?
Well, isn't your hometown known for Dogman?
Yeah, there's like werewolf creatures, but the point is that he could have offered assistance to this, what he says is your Llorona, possibly, but it could have been a woman in distress being attacked by the cadejo or the hombre lobo, as the people call it.
Yeah, and then I wouldn't be here to tell the story. I'd have my guts ripped out or something.
Didn't you have a bunch of your friends? I know y'all are young teenage kids, whatever, but didn't you have a bunch of your friends with you?
Yeah, and what are they going to do? What are they going to do to a
country
dog
town?
man?
None of y'all had a gun.
No, we didn't bring a gun with us.
Gosh,
You yell out.
You know, even if we did,
SpongeBob,
what is
boy.
that going to do?
I mean, to be fair, if I was in the same position, I'd probably just scream like, "Do you need help?" And if she didn't say anything, I would be like, "Oh well."
I believe,
Like under my breath, I'd be like, "Hey, you okay?"
What is she doing
Oh, no.
hanging out at a pond in the middle of the country anyway?
that is a good
That ain't
point.
none of my business.
That
She was probably there. If she was a person and not La Llorona, she was probably there doing something insidious anyway.
like drowning her kids and then looking for them later.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what the Llorona
But you know what?
does.
That's what yeah.
It's none of my business what she does. Just leave me alone.
That's like, that sounds like a typical Taylor person. I had a friend of mine go to my hometown and went into a barbecue joint there and started trying to ask questions about these werewolves and stuff like that. And one of these locals literally told him, "What business is it of yours? What are they hurting? Are they hurting you?" And a dude got in the guy's face, and of course, this guy's not. He wasn't like a big tough guy or anything. He's a kid that I had met in college. And I told him a story, and he went and tried to do his own investigating, and he got scared and just he's like, "Dude, people in that town are scary." I was like, so yeah, even if it was a local out there, she's probably drunk and fallen down, or probably throw a bottle of freaking wild turkey at you or something. Oh, well, it's good to know that you ran in terror rather than actually offer assistance to said
To someone
possible.
who is into something that's none of my business.
exactly.
If that was a real person, best case scenario, worst case scenario, it was La Llorona, and at that point, it's time to run anyway.
Oh my god!
What am I going to do? Go introduce myself?
Hey, Scoob, let's go check it out.
Let's split up, gang.
Let's solve this mystery.
Yeah. No, we're
Oh.
Hispanic. We don't solve mysteries. We run from them.
Well, my uncle Butch's farm is real close to there. You know, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's not far from there. I'll tell you a story about that, Mike, Tony, Anthony, everybody, the audience, whoever, SpongeBob. When I was about 9 years old, I'm pretty sure that's how old I was. I was popping fireworks with my cousins Trey and Clayton, and they're my dad's side, the Turners, and they have a farm, a pretty big 100-something acre farm right there, not far from that. How close would you say it is to that cul-de-sac? A mile or two?
From the cul-de-sac, that farm is probably maybe a quarter mile.
Is it that close? Well, I guess if
close.
you, as a crow flies, yeah. If you have to drive out and around, it's probably about a mile. But anyway, there's a pond that we had, and it's always been there in the family farm or whatever. And we were wandering around outside, and it was nighttime, and my Uncle Butch was out hunting, and this was like it was. Texas is weird. Like it was New Year's, around New Year's, like that week, that weird week that is Christmas to New Year's. You know how it's weird? It's like, it's just kind of a weird week. There's nothing going on. You're just kind of waiting until New Year's comes, playing with your Christmas gifts and stuff, popping fireworks, whatever. Well, that's what we were doing. And I had gone over there like the day or two after Christmas and was out there for a couple days, and we were popping fireworks and playing around, whatever. And my little cousins were with me. They're not that much younger than me. 4 or 5 years. And so we were out there playing or whatever, and we probably shouldn't have been going. And I was kind of watching them, you know, probably shouldn't have been going down as far as we were behind the house. And as we got close to that water, we heard something splash in that water, and we heard like this, I don't know how to describe it, like a shriek or something that wasn't an owl. And even at that age, I already knew what an owl was. I was probably 9 or 10. I know the years. I guess I was 10 already. Yeah, I was about 10. And I heard the splash, and my little cousins were there, and they got kind of scared, and they were like, oh my gosh, you know, so they started running back toward the house. And I just remember the image in my mind was of La Llorona, because there was water there. And I remember thinking that that's what it was. And of course, at that age, because you have those stories in your head or whatever. And as I got older, I kind of outgrew all the stories and legends until I was 15, and I saw what I saw as the werewolf looking thing. But that was pretty much, yeah. So when you first told me that story, we were out by the lake, we were working, and you told me we were talking about La Llorona. You know, I think it was me, you, and Scorpion, Anthony. And you told us that story. We were out there by the house they were building, that we were guarding, one of the properties. We had a few properties out on the lake that we did security for. And I remember us talking about the La Llorona. Llorona was like, you know, on the water or whatever. And you told me that story, and I remember thinking about back to what had happened to me as a kid, and I don't know what it was that shriek was, whatever. It sounded like if somebody just, like a woman screamed with her throat and just kind of like echoed like like that. It was like, I can't do it perfectly, but like
when someone rolls their R's, like that same repetitive motion.
Yeah, I can't. And it just kind of went, you know, and it just kept going. And then it sounded like a person, like a female, imitating a bird or something. But you could tell it was a human. Like they were trying, like if somebody were to try to make a noise to make you curious to go check it out. And my little cousins were gone. They were up the hill and back up to the house. And we were kind of acting brave, you know. So we were shooting fireworks like bottle rockets and stuff down toward that pond. And then we heard like a noise, like somebody, like later on we were inside the house. We heard like a noise, like somebody bump against the house. And he had a huge German Shepherd, was a big mean dog. I remember it barking and going crazy. And yeah, and I just remember thinking, dude, what was that? And like I said, it wasn't real to me until later on when I saw what I saw. Then it was like at that moment, everything that I had told was, you know, all these stories and crap. It all became real, and it was no longer crap. It was real. And I just, like when I saw the Hombre Lobo, you know, and I've had neighbors that have seen what they call the Hombre Lobo, and then people who've claimed to have seen the Cadejo, which is like the black dog, which I don't know if they're one and the same. I can't tell you that. I can speculate and say maybe they are, maybe they're not. But yeah, it's pretty crazy that legend exists anywhere there's water, supposedly, which could mean that this thing is some sort of like water demon or spirit.
That very well could be. I mean, you know, maybe she's bound by the water, you know, wherever there's water,
Well, I know that the stories are that if a spirit drowns, that they're supposedly have a very strong, like they're very powerful as long as they stay near the water, like you said, bound by the water. I don't know what that could have been that you heard that night, Anthony, but yeah, I think that you exercised prudence, I guess you would say, and ran like a little coward. So that's probably the best option for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the same thing. Like, I have no idea what you experienced, but all I know is that if I ever scream in the night, that you're going to run away from me.
Probably, yeah.
And it makes me sleep better at night knowing that I can count on you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you made enemies and they show up to do whatever they do, that's your problem.
Wow. You wouldn't help people that you're close to if some enemy showed up.
Well, don't go around making enemies.
I can tell you folks, to the audience at home, what these two would do was yell wolf. They would be the boys that cried wolf. If something came up and they had to, because they've seen me take care of business on a couple occasions, and they're going to be like, wolf, help, and then I'm going to have to come and do it.
I don't know, man. I think that at this point, I'm going to have to rely on myself. You know, I can't just keep calling old wolf to handle all my problems.
Well, I'm not going to handle all your problems, but I think if something comes and tries to attack, I'm probably going to be your first line of defense. Or is that Banjo?
Well, Banjo is my first one, obviously. I mean, 100% counting upon
you know
him.
what? Here's one more story I'll tell before we wrap this put a bow on this one. Here's one for you, Mike. Speaking of dogs, water, whatever. This one was in Louisiana. I got this one from a guy whose family were gator hunters and have been doing it for a long, long time. And when we were talking about the dog and the water and all that, this has all of those elements. They were out near a swamp, and he had a dog with him, a red bone hound, as he called it. And he was out doing, checking his traps, whatever. And his dog started to freak out, and it took off running. And it ran away. It left him. It totally freaking left him. And so he had to walk about 50 yards back up this trail, back toward his truck. When he gets to the truck, the dog is hiding behind the front wheel well, and it's hiding underneath the truck. He said this dog was pretty fearless. It wasn't the biggest, baddest dog that's around, but he said that it was a pretty tough hound dog. And he had found it as a stray when it was young. It was a puppy. It had been abandoned, and he raised him. And he had never been afraid. He said that this thing had stood off bobcats and raccoons and everything else, and had been in close proximity to gators and was never backing down. But whatever this was, scared him. And he had heard all the stories about the Rougarou and Bigfoot and all this other stuff. So all this stuff's going through his mind, what this could be. So he hauled tail pretty much out of there and got back to his truck to find his dog cowering underneath it. What he tells me is pretty crazy. He says he goes to get in his truck, and somewhere along the line, he had lost his keys. The truck was locked. It was an old Ford. And he said it was like from the 80s or whatever. There wasn't no boop, boop, and open the door. So he's trying to find his keys. He can't find his keys. He's obviously dropped them, and he doesn't know where they're at. And I guess in his panic, what ended up happening was he had pulled the keys out of his pocket, and he kept running, and I guess he had dropped them. And so he had to go back down the trail. He said about 20 yards back down the trail, he finds his keys. And he says as he is bending down to pick them up, he looks up, he can see the water's edge. And he sees this thing, not floating toward him or anything like that, nothing that dramatic, but he sees this thing standing like with its back facing the water. He can see it clearly, and it's wearing like a tattered gray like dress or whatever, and it's looking toward the water. And he says that it's like obviously a woman, like it's shaped like a woman. And he said it was at dusk, it wasn't quite dark yet, and this thing, whatever it was on the edge of the water and had its back to him. And when he went to pick up the keys, he said he made some noise, and he was like, oh, crap, except he said the other word. And this thing just kind of like turned at a weird angle, like it just turned kind of sideways and then jerked its head toward him and looked at him like to the left and jerked its head and looked at him. And he said that it opened up its mouth and he could see it, like, and at that point, like he closed his eyes, like, what am I looking at? And reopened them. And he said that from the time he closed his eyes and kind of reopened them, this thing had already moved about 10 more yards toward him, and it hadn't even moved its body. Like, it was just the way it was by the water. It was like 10 yards closer to him. Yeah, like it teleported. And he said that when its mouth was open, there were worms coming out of the eyes and the mouth, like a decaying corpse. And then he said that while he was staring at this thing, he couldn't believe what he was staring. His eyes were trying to adjust to it. He could hear his dog whimpering and then like barking, kind of howling. And he said that the thought in his mind was that his dog was calling him to go. And so he turned and tried to just pretending like he didn't see it, and just turned and took off running back toward the truck. Got in the truck, opened the door, got in the truck. The dog jumped in, and the dog just sat in his lap. He said he had to literally push the dog out of his lap to get the truck started. And it went down into the floorboard and crawled down by his feet, and he had to kick the dog, not literally kick the dog, but push the dog with his foot, I guess.
Yeah, like push him.
Well, he said he had to kick him out of the floorboard, but I'm assuming, I'm going to be nice here and say that he was pushing the dog with his leg to get it off of him. So he could, heck, he might have kicked it to get it off of him if that thing was there. And he said that he was fumbling for, to get the truck started. And then, of course, the truck's doing the run thing, and then finally it starts. And then he said after that, he went and got a new truck. He said he'd been holding out for years. And he said that was it. No more messing with this truck. It had it for 20 years. He was done with it. And he said that he starts the truck up and he starts to back out. This thing was just like floating, like gliding up the trail towards him. And he said that when he was looking at it, it was just like a decaying corpse in a tattered old dress. It looked like it was from the 1800s. And he got out of there. Now, that story I was going to save for another zombie episode because I didn't know exactly what that was. But we're on the theme here of female ghost entities, hag entities with fangs, whatever. He didn't report fangs on that, but it's bad enough. I mean, it's scary enough that you can, so I mean,
dropping your keys, your vehicle not starting.
Yeah, well, the vehicle did start, but he said that he had to give it a couple. But after that, he was like, "I'm done with this," and literally the next day, he was looking at another truck, and so he retired that one.
Smart man learns from his mistakes.
Oh, yeah. But just when you think about it, what could that be? I mean, what was that? Was that person, did they drown there? Or what was that?
Maybe they were murdered there?
Murdered there, I mean, who knows? But
or it was just, a starving lady asking for help. And he just
cold and wet and was trying to get help.
He was like, I got all these worms and maggots coming out of my mouth. I mean... Because I've been out here for months and I've just had...
She was asking if he could render aid in getting the worms out of her face. Yeah, that's probably what it was. Probably what was going on with Anthony's ghost too, or whatever, was just wanting help and he ran off.
Oh, so that's the theme isn't even water ghosts. It's just...
cowards.
Cowards.
Sir, I'm not calling you a coward.
No,
you gave me that
totally
story.
Joking.
I'm not going to... Mr. R, I'll call you R. I'm not making fun of you, sir. That is not.
Yes, he is.
Shut up.
Take it from me. Yes, he is.
I do not make anybody that knows, I do not mock or make fun of the guests that are people who send me stories. That is not true. That is absolutely not true.
No, he saves that all for me.
I was going to say, he leaves that all for us.
And then
mocking and stuff.
Sure.
And then he takes my food. That's why I'm skinny. And he's...
Well, we're both skinny.
Not.
Mike, one time we were at the mall and Anthony wanted to do this prank where because he was when he was younger, he was a lot skinnier. He started lifting weights. He gained about 30, 40 pounds. But when he was young, he was real thin. I mean, he looked like he was a starving child or something. And your dad's very thin, Anthony.
Yeah, we have good genetics.
Your sister's thin too. Well, you don't, but your dad and your sister do. But anyway, so Anthony's sitting we're at the food court, and this was back when I was shaped like a freaking sea cow, a manatee, and I was, really overweight. I had let myself go at that time, and was a long way from getting back to where I needed to be. And Anthony thought, oh, this would be funny if I just sit there and act like I'm not allowed to eat. Can I just reach over and act like I'm going to grab a piece of my food and
please, sir, I want some more.
And you go, no, get out of here. And I was like, you really think that's funny? That would be cute. Somebody's going to call and say that I'm neglecting you because you look like an 8-year-old child, even though you're 15, because you're so scrawny. And he thought it would be cute to do that. And I was like, no, it wouldn't be, because they're going to see this big fat beluga whale with this little starving child that looks like he's from India. And they're gonna freaking call CPS on me or whatever. But that's his idea of humor, folks. Like, that was what he wanted to do, was lampoon me with that.
I think it's a great joke.
Wow.
Yeah, you do. You would. You were a little scrawny, weird kid too. I remember going to eat dinner and Tony, Tony taking 2 hours to eat a few bites of a cheeseburger. Oh, well. Anyway, folks, that's all the time we had for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. And our guest, who's going to be coming back on here frequently, is Michael Moran, adding a little bit of another voice to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on, Mike, and everybody that's listening at home. From me, Mike, Tony, and Anthony, everybody at the Paranormal Roundtable, all you folks joining in, listening to us shoot the breeze and tell these crazy stories that are just kind of scary. Good night.